Hi everyone. Today's video is a bit of a controversial one, and I am going to take the time to try to break everything down as far as possible, but I'd like to disclaim now that it's a very broad topic. Everything that we do here is very, very broad, very honestly subjective, and in my opinion. And so I'm open to critique, open to feedback, discussion. I am throwing this out there because I think it's worth a discussion, especially now with the frequency or level shifts or extreme jumps some of our lives are going to go through. I think especially over the next few months, it's worth considering the power of your desires, the bloodline you come from, and your identity, how all of that links to your identity, the weight of your identity, and how all of those interlink in a bowl. you know I feel a bit pensive about addressing it because I know how this is one of those topics that could come across extremely, I could come across very misunderstood. But I do believe, again, like I said, that at least bringing it up is very important. And I think that at least discussing it is going to do a lot for even my own refocusing of intentions. So, manifestation, and honestly, prayer, ritual, work. As someone who is a descendant of Indigenous African / African bloodlines, whatever. So I'd like to first define what I am approaching manifestation as in this video, which is making use of I thought about this, I think yesterday. I'd said it's making use of all your senses or integrating your senses in a way in order to bring an internal visualization into real life. I might redefine that, honestly, as we discuss further, because I'm trying to get to the root of how that experience is extremely different for each person on layers that include that spiritual world or sense that we work with. That's the foundation of these rituals. The spiritual understanding of the person manifesting is extremely important and has so much to do with the quality of the manifestation, how long it takes, what exactly that desire or manifestation is, And I think that part of the problem with the trendiness of spirituality in general is the diluted understanding of how all of that works. And then a lot of people either tend to get very impatient or they can't recognize when it is that their manifestation has come into fruition, or they self-sabotage and they get like a shock when it comes and they don't know how to handle it and then they fuck it up. I believe all of that is energetic. There are obviously so many ways. Again, this is a very layered conversation. So there are so many other ways to approach this, so many other understandings, but this is my own. As African / Indigenous peoples, or people that come from a bloodline that you're related by blood to anybody who moves with the seasons and who breathes and contracts and expands with the earth's motions. the way I understand it is we have some kind of like, we come already at a deficit in terms of our like spiritual account. We come almost in debt, but that debt ends up being a fruitful kind of like, it's that generational curse thing that actually ends up being a gift. You know, that inverted weird thing that's actually very divine and very, it's part of the contradictory nature of God and the divine. So that, the fact that we all have that we come into this world with that package, with that assignment, with that book. I was going to say weight's a burden, but I don't want it to come across as that. It's an assignment. That obviously becomes the outer layer coating of our manifestation process. And it's really embedded in our identity as well, obviously, this curse. It's embedded in who we are, the trauma. As an example, if you are an Indigenous or African person and you say you want, let's be specific, you want the latest iPhone model. Knowing full well, bring this up again, knowing full well the ethical controversies about Apple, you still want the latest edition of the iPhone, and you're an Indigenous or African person, do you see the dissonance? That is an immediate split within you, where either you obtain the iPhone, you feel absolutely nothing after you get it, and in fact it ends up being a burden or some kind of upkeep where it breaks and then you have to spend a lot to fix it and all of this nonsense that really could have been avoided if you just I don't know, accepted the phone you have now, or purchase more ethically, you know? Honor your ancestry, the bloodline you come from, by considering, and okay, this is up to you, but this is helpful in connecting and doing ancestral work. Consider what their desires were. I like to consider how simple their desires were, how simple their lives were, really. Towards the end of my grandparents' life, as of about like 10 years ago now, I remember observing how fine they were sitting, just taking a seat, and how at peace they were with just being in the moment, or looking at us as their grandchildren, being present, playing and laughing. Those are really beautiful times. There may be that sense of that right now, by the way. We are so together in that. If you feel very nostalgic for like the early 2000s, specifically like 2010, 2011. But anyway, that's a random insert. Either you receive the desire, you feel nothing, or you identify so much with feeling the hit from getting the new purchase that you kind of become a slave to that. You become the slave to every iPhone release because you're addicted to that hit. Both really reject the personal sovereignty that is very naturally respected in Indigenous cultures through the agreement to flow with nature and with the earth's breathing and seasons, and accepting your season as it comes each time, accepting the stagnancy when it arrives, accepting your slow phases, being patient with your moments of low financial resources, you don't have a job, take that for the lesson in stillness that it is. Build the faith and the trust and the hope that you will get a job at the right time. You know what I mean? Really, like, it would be so useful, I think, for a lot of us, brown-skinned people, Indigenous African people, to blend and really integrate as far as we can our spiritual understandings and what our ancestors may have followed or just tapping in briefly into what it may feel like or what it might look like for you to flow with the earth and the earth's motions, because that is our true allegiance to the earth and to nature and to the birds and the trees, to listen, to hear, feel them as they move, Start really applying the practice of observing your animals if you have pets, or observing the birds. And this always grounds me, just this recognition of how birds act up before the storm. Well, not act up, they fly erratically and kind of all over the place before a storm, or the way animals behave each new moon, the way cats behave each new moon. Put time aside to actually observe that. Take note of it. Yes, you may know about it, but look at it. Observe the animals as they move. Lose yourself in that. That's extremely helpful in aligning with the cycles, especially if you are someone who menstruates. It is so important to get used to that sense as soon as possible, so you can start following that sense more religiously and strictly, and allow it to guide you to your truest form of abundance, the one that's actually rich for you, not just in the amount of money you have or the brands and the size of your house, whatever the fuck, but in how you really truly feel, and the ability to pull in what you want from that true feeling. Because also a lot of these things, obviously, as we know by now, are just advertising points. They're just marketing points. You wanting that specific brand or whatever the fuck is largely just a marketing point from influence. You were just influenced for it. You were influenced to do it. You don't actually want the thing. You know what I mean? That's the case for a lot of us. It's definitely the case for me for a lot of things. And honestly, I think some inquiry needs to go into your awareness, in my opinion, if you still find satisfaction, deep sense of satisfaction. You'll know the difference in like brands and materials and products and all that shit, consumerism, Wow, that actually was a lot briefer than I thought it would be. I don't really have much else to explain further than that. I do think that if you get it, you get it. And I'm really appreciative if you do. I just want to recap now, though, in this moment, and see if I mentioned everything. This topic really is a lot more nuanced than can be put in any video. And in my experience, has to be experienced. It has to be a lived thing to be curious about where your desires come from and to align them as true as possible with something true to you. And definitely also something that settles that debt, that alchemizes or transmutes that curse and heals it so that it can be something like medicine for you and those you love. I'd also wanted to mention the idea or bring in another perspective of what happens when people of Indigenous African bloodlines lose themselves in the act of desiring and desire things that are totally far from their identity, their culture, the flow of moving with nature and earth. I believe that the transaction of investing in anything is an energy transfer, and not just of like the symbol of money. It's kind of giving away a piece of yourself to that thing or to that experience, whatever it is. And the energetic dangers of consumerism is that that act of transaction becomes very fickle It's just a quick thing. And that quickness and that fickleness completely invalidates that part that you are giving and you're a piece of your energy. You know, when you invest or sit in watching a movie on Netflix, you are giving Netflix and that movie a piece of your energy by giving it your awareness, by giving it 2 hours of your time and attention. You are giving it your energy. You are feeding the life of that Netflix movie and the Netflix streaming platform. As everything physical has an energetic reflection wherever it's at in the energetic world, you know, that beast, can you imagine how huge of a beast things like Netflix, Apple, and they're just feeding and they're just gobbling up, you know? And as people of African indigenous bloodlines, we have been paying that debt. We've been feeding these energetic beasts. And yeah, time is up. You see that? Time is up. The clock has long struck for us to get our souls back from these beasts. There's no getting it back if you just want things willy-nilly. It's a whole other thing. Now I'm thinking of sensation. I'm thinking of someone saying that they want a really nice car because they want to imagine, or they're really attached to the sensation of what it might feel like to hold the steering wheel of that car that they really want so bad. You know what I mean? All good and well, but get to the root of what that feeling is. What is the frequency of that feeling when you hold the new thing, or you're in that car you want, or you're in the house you want? What is that feeling? What is that? That actually is a reflection of your truth, right? It's a reflection of the divine, which is supposed to always be with us, close to us, right by our side, which we don't have to buy or spend a single cent for. We don't have to do anything. If the truth is that the divine and that God is always connected with us, that the divine is always present, if that is always true all the time, then why the fuck would we want anything else? You know what I mean? Yeah, so anything you want has to be worth it. It has to match the truth of the divine, because I already have the divine. I'm already connected to God. If I'm already present with all that is, what else would I want? Whatever else I would want has to be worth it. It has to match that. So let it match that, you know? Be really holy in whatever way that means to you. That's up to you. That's the holiness. That's the holiest experience of it all. That whatever is holy is up to you. I feel like I've broken that down as much as I can. I'm glad I said that last bit about adding energy bodies to the things that we give our awareness to. That's going to start being so, so true. And we're going to start to understand why it is that evil persists. If the beast is still being fed, nothing's going to happen to it. It's just going to get bigger and bigger. So, yeah, we have a lot of truths to face about a lot of things, but more specifically about what happens when you live a life that's out of the accordance of the flow of the universe and of earth and nature, and when you try to take and pillage and work from a place of greed. No matter how when you decide to sell your soul, you know, when you make a deal with the devil will always come to collect. Doesn't matter how long it takes. And sometimes the longer it takes, the better for the devil, because of the element of surprise. Which is so right now coded, if you ask me. The devil is out to surprise a lot of people. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really think that's all I have. I really hope that that was a balanced reminder for everybody to to start taking the work, to start trusting in the work, let me rather say, and start really surrendering to the work. Because if you don't, then if you're not open to doing the work, then it's going to be somebody else's work, because the work has to be done. And I was actually watching a video or reading from a few months ago where I addressed this fact that because of how, I'll actually link it in the description of this video, because of how important the work is, because of how necessary it is, and how it's really time. It's time for this fucking work to be done. Anyone who isn't part of the flow of the work, in purposing the work, in making it happen, has to get the fuck out of the way. And it's not your call. It's not your call who stays, who goes in terms of the greater picture. Yes, of course, in your life. But anyway, point is we have to all make sure we're showing up. And I do get the sense that I intuit and read for people who are definitely showing up. So thank you so much. Always. Thank you for your entire existence. I'm very, very grateful. I will see you in the next one of these. I don't know what I called this. I don't know what this is to me, but I'll see you in the next one.